Before the dawn of time, in the whisper of the cosmos, a conflict was set into motion, one that would echo through the corridors of history, transcending time and shaping the very fabric of nations. The struggle between the descendants of Abraham, Jews and Arabs, has raged for millennia, and yet the true cause of this eternal strife has remained shrouded in mystery. Why does this war continue to burn so fiercely? Is there something hidden, a truth buried deep within the ancient prophecies that could change everything we know? What if the key to understanding this conflict, and perhaps even resolving it, has been sitting in plain sight all along, within the pages of the Bible? Is it possible that the Bible holds the answers to this ancient riddle? That the origins of this battle can be traced back to a divine promise, a fractured family, and a blessing that set the stage for generations of strife? Could it be that the Bible's teachings are not just about spiritual salvation, but also a roadmap to understanding the eternal tensions between the sons of Isaac and Ishmael? In this video, we will uncover the startling truth hidden in the ancient scriptures. We'll explore how the conflict between Jews and Arabs is not a modern political issue, but a battle that began long before the birth of nations. You will discover the prophetic origins of this strife, and how the ancient promises of God to Abraham continue to shape the fate of these two peoples today. What can we learn from the Bible about the tension between Israel and the Arab nations? And more importantly, what does it mean for the future of both? How can this ancient understanding bring us closer to peace, healing, and reconciliation? As we dive into this incredible journey, ask yourself, what if the key to peace lies in understanding the sacred promises given thousands of years ago? This is not just about history, it's about hope. What if, through this understanding, we can finally begin to heal the rift that has divided families, nations, and generations? If this resonates with you, leave your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective might just be the spark that leads us to a deeper understanding. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe as we continue uncovering the truths that have been hidden for far too long. This journey is just beginning, and the answers may be more profound than you ever imagined. Before we dive into the deep waters of history and prophecy, it's crucial to understand the sacred origins of the conflict between Jews and Arabs, which is deeply embedded in the Bible. These ancient nations, though distinct, share a common root, one that can be traced back to the figure of Abraham. The story begins long before the birth of nations, with a divine promise and a fracture that would ripple through generations. Abraham, a man of faith, was chosen by God to be the father of many nations. But his story is not just one of faith, it is also one of divine promise and family conflict, a conflict that continues to reverberate through the present day. Isaac, his son by Sarah, was the child of promise, the heir to the covenant that God made with Abraham. But God also promised Hagar, Sarah's servant and the mother of Abraham's first son, Ishmael, that her son would become the father of a great nation as well. The Bible tells us that God's blessing was upon both sons, but the paths they would take would be very different. Isaac would become the father of Israel, and Ishmael the father of many nations, including the Arab peoples. This is the root of the modern struggle between Jews and Arabs, a rivalry that began as a family dispute over blessing, favor, and inheritance. And it is a story that still unfolds in our time, played out in the streets of Jerusalem, in the politics of the Middle East, and in the hearts of millions. The Bible, however, offers more than just an explanation for this tension. It provides a roadmap for healing and understanding. The story of Esau and Jacob, the grandsons of Abraham, further illustrates this conflict. Esau, the older son of Isaac, was the firstborn and, by tradition, the one entitled to the blessing. Yet through a series of events that might seem shocking or unjust, Jacob, the younger son, tricked his father into giving him the birthright. Esau, devastated by this loss, vowed to kill his brother, and so the seeds of division between the descendants of Jacob, Israel, and Esau, Edom, were sown. This betrayal, this tension, would reverberate down through the centuries, creating a legacy of conflict between the descendants of Jacob and Esau, just as we see today between Israel and the Arab nations. This story, however, is not one of endless division. The Bible offers hope, even in the midst of this ancient struggle. Despite their rivalry, God's promise of blessing still rests on both families. In Genesis 12, God declares to Abraham, "I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you." But he does not stop there. God continues, "All peoples on earth will be blessed through you." This is a message of divine inclusivity, a promise that God's blessing will ultimately bring healing, even to those who have fought for so long. This divine promise leads us to a crucial truth that we must understand as we look at the present-day conflict. The struggle between Jews and Arabs is not one that can be solved through political negotiation or military power alone. The resolution, according to the Bible, lies in the fulfillment of God's ultimate purpose, a peace that transcends human understanding and divisions. This peace is not one of mere coexistence. It is a peace that acknowledges the deep spiritual bonds shared by both the sons of Isaac and the sons of Ishmael. As we reflect on these biblical stories, we see that God's plan has always been one of reconciliation. He promises to heal the division between his children, and this is the heart of the biblical narrative. We may look at the modern-day conflict between Israel and the Arab world and feel a sense of despair. But the Bible offers a path forward, a way of healing that comes not through violence or hatred, but through understanding and love. The reconciliation promised in the Bible isn't a vague ideal or an impossible dream. It is rooted in the very nature of God's covenant. This reconciliation requires that we understand each other's history, pain, and promise. We must seek to understand the experiences of the Jewish people and the Arab nations, and see them not as enemies, but as brothers and sisters who share a common divine ancestry. The Bible speaks of a time when the wolf will lie down with the lamb, a time when the division between Israel and the Arab nations will be healed, and the promises of peace will be realized. It is important to remember that God's timing is not our timing. There are no quick solutions, no easy fixes to the tensions that have lasted for millennia. But the Bible assures us that God is working, even in the midst of these conflicts, to bring about his will for ultimate peace. The story of Abraham and his sons, Isaac and Ishmael, is not one of despair, but of hope, a hope that calls us to look beyond the conflict and see the divine promise of reconciliation. We must not look at the events unfolding in the Middle East through the lens of politics or power alone. We must view them through the lens of God's eternal purpose, a purpose that includes both Jews and Arabs and promises peace and healing for both. This understanding opens the door to healing, not just for the nations involved, but for all who seek peace in a fractured world. What can we learn from this ancient struggle? We learn that reconciliation takes time, understanding, and a willingness to see beyond our differences. The biblical narrative calls us to recognize the common ground that we share, the deep connection that links us all as children of Abraham and ultimately, children of God. This is not just a story for Jews and Arabs, it is a story for all of us. In our own lives, we experience division, conflict, and strife. Whether it is between family members, friends, or nations, the call to reconciliation is the same. The Bible challenges us to pursue peace, to seek understanding, and to work toward healing, even when the road seems long and difficult. In the end, the greatest lesson we learn from the story of Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, Jacob, and Esau is that God's plan for peace is not limited by human conflict or division. God's promise of reconciliation is for all people, regardless of their background, history, or nationality. We are called to embrace this divine vision of peace, to become agents of healing in a world desperately in need of it. As we look at the conflicts of today, let us remember the promise of the Bible, the promise of a future where the descendants of Isaac and Ishmael will be united and where peace will reign over the land. This is not just a hope for the future, it is a call to action today. So, let us reflect on how we, as individuals, can be part of this divine work of reconciliation. How can we seek peace in our own lives, in our own relationships, and in the world around us? Let us commit to walking in the footsteps of Abraham, seeking peace with our brothers and sisters, and trusting in the promise of God's ultimate plan for healing and reconciliation. As we continue to explore this profound biblical truth, I encourage you to leave your thoughts in the comments below. What does this message of reconciliation mean to you in your life today? Together, we can reflect on these powerful truths and share in the hope that the Bible offers, a hope that can heal not only the divisions in the Middle East, but the divisions in our own hearts as well. The Bible's depiction of the promise and curse that unfolded from Abraham's family is a powerful reflection of the eternal tension between the descendants of Isaac and Ishmael. The curse that was pronounced over Esau, Isaac's firstborn, further complicated this dynamic, creating ripples that would extend across generations. God's promise to Abraham was a blessing, yet the conflict between his sons, the struggle for that divine inheritance, remains at the heart of the strife we witness today between Jews and Arabs. God's promises to both Isaac and Ishmael are intertwined with the lives of all nations, and the curse upon Esau is part of the divine narrative of redemption and reconciliation. God declared that the descendants of Esau, the Edomites, would be in opposition to the descendants of Jacob, Israel. This prophecy was not just about a single generation. It transcended time, carrying a spiritual significance that reverberated through history, even to the present day. The deep wounds of the past cannot be healed without first understanding the spiritual origin of the conflict. God's prophetic word, spoken through the lives of these patriarchs, isn't just about a distant history. It speaks to our lives today, urging us to understand the deep connections between our past and present. The prophecy in the Bible tells us that there would be struggles between the descendants of Isaac and Ishmael, a rivalry that would define much of world history. But as always in the Bible, there is hope woven into the very fabric of the prophecy. Even in the midst of this eternal struggle, the promise of God remains. God has not forgotten either side of this family, and his plan for reconciliation runs deeper than human conflict or political divisions. The Bible reveals something remarkable in the midst of this conflict. God's promise of blessing wasn't given to one side at the exclusion of the other. The descendants of both Isaac and Ishmael are promised greatness, but also a deep connection to each other, a future reconciliation in which both will find peace under the same divine blessing. This is not a distant hope, it's a profound truth for our generation. Even now, God's intention is to bring his children together, to heal the divisions between them, and to restore the unity that was originally intended in the promise to Abraham. As we reflect on the reality of this promise, it's crucial to look at history not just as a series of events, but as a divine tapestry that God is weaving throughout the ages. The conflict between Israel and the Arab nations isn't just a geopolitical struggle, it's a spiritual battle that transcends time. But the story of Isaac, Ishmael, and Esau isn't just one of division. It's a story of God's faithfulness and his desire for peace. When we understand this, we see that the path to peace isn't about winning or losing. It's about embracing the divine promise of reconciliation. In the Bible, God does not abandon his promises. His covenant with Abraham extends to all of his descendants, including both the Israelites and the Arabs. The prophetic vision for both nations, Israel and the Arab world, is not one of perpetual division, but one of eventual reconciliation and peace. This divine truth has the power to transform our understanding of the Middle East conflict. The conflict is real, but the promise of peace is even greater. This message of hope, though rooted in the ancient scriptures, applies to us today. If we truly understand the depth of God's plan for reconciliation, we will approach the ongoing tensions between Jews and Arabs with a mindset of healing, not division. The challenges we face are great, but the Bible offers us a way forward, a path of understanding, forgiveness, and reconciliation. As we move forward in our exploration of this topic, we must remember that God's timing is not our own. The promise of peace and reconciliation is something that will unfold in God's perfect timing. The path may not always be clear, but it is laid out for us in the Scriptures. God is at work in the world, even in the midst of division and strife, to bring about His plan of peace. Our role is to trust in His promises, to pray for peace, and to seek healing in the midst of conflict. This leads us to an important point. The resolution of the conflict between Israel and the Arab world isn't just about political negotiations or military victories. It's about a spiritual transformation, a change of heart. The Bible calls us to love one another, to seek peace, and to reconcile the brokenness that exists between us. As we reflect on the promises made to Abraham and his sons, let us consider how we can apply these principles in our own lives. How can we bring healing to the divisions we see around us? How can we be part of God's plan for reconciliation in our own communities, our own families, and our own hearts? This biblical understanding calls us to a higher purpose, one that transcends political or national identity. It calls us to see each other as brothers and sisters, children of Abraham, with a shared history, a shared struggle, and a shared hope. It calls us to embrace the truth that God's plan is bigger than the conflict. We are all part of His divine tapestry. Now, as we consider the historical context and real-world manifestations of this conflict, we can see how the past has shaped the present. The tension between Jews and Arabs, rooted in the ancient promises and prophecies of the Bible, continues to shape the political landscape of today's Middle East. This is a conflict that, at its core, is a battle for blessing and inheritance, issues that go back to the very beginning of the Bible. But as we've seen, this battle is not the final word. The Bible offers us a glimpse of a future where the descendants of Isaac and Ishmael are reconciled, where God's promise of peace is fulfilled, and where the children of Abraham stand together in harmony. This is the hope that we are called to embrace as we look forward to God's work in the world. As we move on to the final section of our exploration, we will see how the Bible's prophetic vision of peace and reconciliation can transform our understanding of the present-day conflict. The promise of reconciliation is not just a distant hope. It is a reality that we can work toward, guided by the divine truth of God's Word. In this light, we are not mere spectators in the drama of history. We are called to be active participants in God's redemptive work. The reconciliation that we long for in the world starts with each of us, in our hearts, in our relationships, and in our communities. By embracing God's promise of peace, we can help pave the way for a future where the children of Isaac and Ishmael and all people find healing and unity in God's divine love. Let us move forward with this truth in our hearts, knowing that the path to peace is a journey we are all called to walk together. As we continue to explore the ancient wisdom of the Bible, may we be inspired to seek reconciliation, to love our neighbors, and to trust in the God who promises to heal our brokenness and bring His peace to the world. The Bible speaks of reconciliation and healing not just as future promises, but as an invitation for us to engage in the present. The story of Abraham and his sons, Isaac and Ishmael, reminds us that the divisions we face today are not new. These rifts were prophesied long ago, and yet God's plan for reconciliation has always been present. The promise of peace is not something far off in the future, it is something that calls to us today. The key to understanding this deep, eternal promise lies in embracing the true nature of God's love, a love that does not divide, but unites. The biblical narrative doesn't merely explain conflict, it shows us how to respond to it. Just as God promised Abraham that his descendants would become a blessing to all nations, that promise extends beyond just the children of Isaac and Ishmael. It includes us all, those who seek peace and those who are willing to engage in the difficult but rewarding work of reconciliation. When we look at the tensions between Jews and Arabs, we are not seeing just a political struggle, but a spiritual battle, one that reflects the ancient longing for the fulfillment of God's promises. The reconciliation that the Bible offers is not one of superficial peace, but a profound and lasting healing that reaches deep into the hearts of individuals and nations. We must first recognize the beauty in the biblical vision of peace. It's not just the absence of conflict, but the restoration of relationships and the healing of wounds. True peace, as promised by God, is not something we achieve on our own. It is a work of the divine, guided by love, forgiveness, and understanding. The Bible teaches us that this work of reconciliation requires patience, humility, and a willingness to see beyond the hurt. It's not about excusing wrongs or overlooking deep divisions, but about acknowledging that we are all children of Abraham, each called to a purpose in God's divine plan. Even when history has brought pain and division, God's promise remains a beacon of hope, a promise that extends to all, including the children of Isaac and Ishmael. When we approach the Middle East conflict through the lens of biblical reconciliation, we are called to move beyond the rhetoric of division. We are invited to embrace a vision of unity, where nations, despite their history, can come together in mutual respect and love. This vision is not impossible. It's rooted in the very words of the Bible, where God promises that His plan will ultimately bring healing to even the deepest wounds. The Bible doesn't just show us a conflict, it gives us the keys to healing it. The lesson here is not about fixing the past or erasing the pain that has shaped the current divisions. Instead, the Bible calls us to a different kind of work, one that focuses on the future, one where reconciliation is not a distant hope, but a present reality. By embracing God's promises of peace, we can be active participants in that healing work, whether in the Middle East or in our own lives. This reconciliation doesn't just affect political boundaries, it affects our hearts. It calls us to love one another as God has loved us, unconditionally and sacrificially. It's a reminder that peace begins in the heart and ripples out to change the world around us. We must also recognize that the conflict between Israel and the Arab world isn't just a political issue, it's deeply spiritual. The struggle for peace between these nations is not merely about borders or land, it's about the spiritual struggle for fulfillment of God's promises. When we view the conflict through this lens, it shifts our perspective from one of division to one of hope, understanding, and ultimately unity. God's plan for reconciliation extends beyond human effort. In the Bible, God often speaks of His covenant in terms of eternal promises, promises that cannot be broken by human hands. When God promises peace, He doesn't mean temporary peace or peace that depends on political agreements. He means a lasting peace that is rooted in His divine will. This peace is already unfolding in God's timing, and our role is to join in this work of reconciliation by embodying His love in our own lives. As we reflect on the divisions in the Middle East and in our own lives, we must ask ourselves, how can we, as individuals, be part of this greater work of reconciliation? This is not about waiting for the world to change. It's about changing our hearts, embracing the truth of God's love, and offering that love to others, even in the face of division and hurt. It's about being part of a greater narrative, one that leads to healing, forgiveness, and unity. The Bible doesn't promise that reconciliation will be easy. It requires a deep commitment to God's way of love and peace, which often requires sacrifice and humility. But God's promises are not empty words. They are powerful, life-changing truths. When we embrace them, we see the world around us change in ways we could never imagine. This transformation begins with each one of us choosing to walk in the footsteps of the one who offers us true peace. The journey of reconciliation is long and often difficult. But as we continue to look at the story of Abraham's children, we see that God's plan is unfolding and His promises are faithful. The divisions we see today are not the end of the story. They are part of a larger narrative, a narrative that ultimately leads to peace. God's ultimate plan for the Middle East, for Israel, for the Arab nations, and for all people is one of unity and peace. As we embrace this vision of reconciliation, we must remember that our role in this divine story is to love one another and work toward peace. It's not enough to acknowledge the promise of reconciliation. We must live it out every day. This is the heart of the Bible's message. Peace is not just something we hope for, but something we work toward. It is something that begins in the hearts of individuals and spreads through communities, nations, and ultimately, the world. In conclusion, the Bible offers us a hope that transcends human understanding, a hope for peace and reconciliation that is rooted in God's eternal promises. By embracing this vision of peace, we can be part of the healing work that God is already doing in the world. Let us remember that we are all called to be agents of peace, living out the promises of reconciliation that God has given us. And as we do, we participate in the great work of healing and hope that God is unfolding in our world. As we come to the end of this journey through the ancient promises and prophecies that have shaped the course of history, it's important to pause and reflect on the deeper truths we've uncovered. The Bible, in its timeless wisdom, reveals not only the origins of the conflict between Jews and Arabs, but also the path to healing, unity, and peace. We have explored how this eternal struggle began with Abraham, a man whose faith shaped the future of nations, and whose legacy is still alive in the hearts of billions. His story is not just about conflict, it is about promise, redemption, and the hope of reconciliation. The Bible speaks to us with a powerful truth, that peace is not merely the absence of war, but the restoration of broken relationships. This is a message that resonates in every corner of the world, especially in places where division seems insurmountable. The promise of reconciliation, which was given to Isaac, Ishmael, and their descendants, is not just a hope for the distant future, it is a reality we are called to participate in today. This divine peace isn't something we can achieve through our own strength or wisdom. It's something that God brings about through His grace, His love, and His timing. When we look at the Middle East, a region that has been torn by conflict for millennia, we can often feel a sense of hopelessness. The struggles between Israel and the Arab nations may seem endless, but the Bible reminds us that God's plan for peace is greater than any conflict. The reconciliation promised in the Scriptures is not just between nations, it is also between hearts. The path to peace begins within each of us, in the way we see one another, in the way we offer grace and love, even when it seems undeserved. We have to remember that this journey of reconciliation is not a passive one. It is an active calling. The Bible urges us to be peacemakers, to seek understanding, and to build bridges even when the world tells us to build walls. God's plan for peace is not something that will be brought about by human effort alone. It requires us to embrace His divine will, to align our hearts with His heart, and to trust in His promise that, in the end, He will bring all things together in perfect harmony. Perhaps you're sitting here today hearing these words and wondering, how can I make a difference? What can I do to help bring about the peace that the Bible speaks of? The answer is simpler than we might think. It starts with love. Love is the foundation of reconciliation, and the Bible calls us to love one another, to forgive, and to seek peace wherever we go. This love is not just for the easy relationships, it's for the difficult ones too. It's for the ones where history has left deep scars, where the pain feels too raw to even touch. But the Bible assures us that no wound is too deep for God's love to heal. We may never fully understand the depths of the struggle in the Middle East or the years of pain and division that have shaped the lives of millions, but we can be agents of healing in our own lives, in our relationships, and in the world around us. The Bible is not a passive book, it's an active guide that calls us to live differently, to act with grace and love, and to reflect God's light in every corner of darkness we encounter. If this video has touched your heart, If you feel that these words have brought you closer to the light in the midst of the darkness, I ask you to consider how you might contribute to this journey of reconciliation and healing. Every moment you spend here engaging with this message is a step toward the peace that we all long for. Whether through your comments, your likes, or your subscriptions, you are helping to spread this message of hope and love. Your support means more than you could ever know, and it fuels me to continue creating content that reflects God's heart for unity. I want to take a moment to thank you from the very depths of my heart. Your presence here, your willingness to listen, and your commitment to seeking truth and reconciliation are the things that keep me going. If you've found value in this message, if it has given you hope, or inspired you to take a step toward healing in your own life, I invite you to share that with others. Share this video with someone who may need to hear it, or comment below with your thoughts, your questions, or your own experiences. Together, we can create a community that values peace, healing, and love. The journey toward reconciliation is long and often difficult, but it is a journey worth taking. As we walk this path together, may we be guided by God's wisdom, His love, and His promise of peace. May we hold on to the hope that no matter how deep the divide, God is at work, healing wounds, restoring relationships, and bringing His children back together. If you believe in the power of this message, if you feel called to share in this work of peace, I encourage you to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support will help us continue to spread the light of God's love to a world that so desperately needs it. Thank you for being a part of this journey, and may God bless you with peace, love, and the strength to walk in His light.